New Pitchfork list. These are always fun. They just put out a top 100 best albums of the 2020s so far. This is Pitchfork, so there's going to be some crazy takes on here. And there's also going to be a lot of weirder stuff that I might not have even heard of. Okay, Vampire Weekend, Only God Was Above Us. Very much deserved. Overall, great album. I think definitely deserves in the top 100. Honestly, this might be a little low. This is the best Vampire Weekend has maybe ever sounded to me. A great progression of their sound. Love that record. I love No Name. I'm a huge No Name fan. I think this is No Name's worst album though, so I don't necessarily think it should be on here, even though I feel like it's a good album. There's just a lot that I don't like about it. Tyler, the Creator, Call Me If You Get Lost. Yeah, I think this has to be in the top 100. In fact, this one is another one that I feel like might be a little low. Probably not Tyler's best album, but I think this is Tyler's best hip hop album. McGee, another one that, I really fell in love with this year. I was a little late to the party on this one. People were telling me to listen to it forever. And I finally got around to it, and I absolutely love it. The amount of artists that I see trying to mimic Miggy's style to varying degrees of success as of recent, all of these underground indie artists, but they can't quite manage to do it because Mickey has something really special going on here. So Mannequin Pussy, this is based from Pitchfork. Honestly, leaning a little farther away from the punk stuff that they're known for, but it's just overall a really good indie rock album with some like super memorable hooks on it. Ken Carson, really? Why? I remember Pitchfork really liking this album, and I just cannot understand why. How could we have like one of the Playboi Carti minions, like the Playboi Carti mimickers on this list at all? I'm not even a Whole Lotta Red fan, honestly. I don't love Whole Lotta Red, the album, but I would take Whole Lotta Red over this one a million out of a million times, even though I'm sure Whole Lotta Red will be on this list, but I like some songs off of this. I don't know if I've ever really gotten Pitchfork's obsession with Haim, but this is not my favorite from them, even though I feel like there are some good songs off of it. I love Eternal Take. Eternal Take is fun. I do really like this album, so I'm happy to see it on here. Lower top 100 for me, I feel like, but overall, I'm a fan of Eternal Take. I would say it's my favorite Uzi record. I think it's like the most consistent Uzi album, and it's the one that just sounds the most like a record. Like, especially in comparison to Pink Tape, like this album is so much better and so much more like refined. Glitch Princess, yes. Glitch Princess, amazing album. There's something so cinematic and alien about this album, and like the production is just another level. And I feel like Soft Scars was a little bit more adventurous into different genres, but I really did like the consistency of Glitch Princess. I feel like it had a really good vision to it. So I'm happy to see Yule on here at all, regardless of what album it is, The Smile, Life for Attracting Attention. If there's going to be an album by The Smile here, it's this one. I do just miss Radiohead, but overall, I feel like this album is gorgeous. There is still a lot of stuff to latch on to as a Radiohead fan off of this album. I think more so than their newer one, even though I think that one's a pretty good too. Florist, there's an intimacy of this Florist record that I love, and I think the songwriting is amazing, but just something about the instrumentation and the ambiance of this album is just so breathtaking. Songwriting is obviously a huge highlight as well, but I just love this Florist album. It's easily one of my favorite folk records of this decade. Being Funny in a Foreign Language, the 1975, I think it deserves to be here. Hands down, easily deserves to be here. I think it's the most like tight, concise 1975 record. I think this is maybe the most unhinged lyrics I've heard from Matty Healy, but it doesn't come across as cringe in any sort of way. I think it's an honest album, and some of my favorite work that Jack Antonoff has done in recent years, for sure. Since A Brief Inquiry, I think is a huge bounce back from Notes on a Conditional Form that, had really good moments on it, but was ultimately all over the place. So I'm really happy they put out like a consistent album like this. Soul Glow, this dude, blending like hip hop and punk, and just nonstop energy. This album is crazy. If you haven't heard this one, I highly recommend checking it out. It's earth shattering at points. I think it's a really interesting experience. Great album. I loved this album. I thought the textures were really cool. I thought it was like a fun, playful, but like interesting electronic album. I really like this one. I can understand why it's not going to be everybody's thing, but I was a huge fan. Taylor Swift Folklore, yeah. I think there are better folk albums that came out around this time, but I think ultimately this is the most consistent Taylor Swift album. I think it's her best and most consistent songwriting ever. Storytelling, just storytelling that necessarily doesn't just have to do with her. And I don't think there's ever an issue with that, but I think it was something that really made her step into a more creative role and do something a little bit more off the beaten path for her. If there's going to be a Taylor Swift album on here in the 2020s, it's definitely Folklore. It's not going to be anything else. I'd be okay with Evermore, but Folklore makes the most sense to me. Phil Elverum, one of the best songwriters in the world, Microphones in 2020, I thought was great. I know everyone wasn't over the moon about it, but I was a huge fan of this album. Pray for Haiti, Mac Homie. Honestly, I don't know if this is my favorite Mac Homie record, but Pray for Haiti is fucking awesome. It's really, really good. You could almost put any one of his albums here. I think he's been so consistent lately. So yeah, if you're into abstract rap, this is a must listen, I think. There's very few Drain Gang projects that I enjoy, and this is one of them. I did like Crest. I wasn't crazy about it, but I liked it. Probably wouldn't be on my list, I don't think, but overall I liked it. Bjork Fosora, it's a bottom tier Bjork record for me. It is. And as much as I like Bjork, and I thought this album was overall a worthwhile experience, and I wouldn't tell people not to listen to it, but I love Bjork. This one was not it for me. Nila Friyanya, Painless, absolutely one of my favorite indie records of the 2020s. There's a great 2000s pop rock energy, I feel like, in the melodic choices, but overall it has a really interesting modern flair to the production. I think it's great. NJ Lenderman, thought this album was really good. I loved the cheeky songwriting, and I think that there's something really charming about MJ Lenderman's songwriting. So probably wouldn't be in my top 100, but I did overall like the album. Dua Lipa, Future Nostalgia, heater of a record. Very few songs off of this album that I don't like. The only song that I really don't like off of this album is Boys Will Be Boys. God damn, it is so on the nose, and it feels so forced in an album that is otherwise so much fun. It just felt like such a label decision to me. And I feel like it's a song that the album overall did not need. But yeah, really, really fun album. I think that it deserves to be on here. Bad Bunny, Un Verano Sin Ti. I thought this was good. Was YHLQ or whatever, was that album in the 2020s too? I think that was 2020, right? Because I'd probably put that one on here instead of Un Verano Sin Ti, but Un Verano Sin Ti is good. I just don't think I'd put it this high. The Weeknd, Dawn FM. Yeah, this album grew on me a lot. I feel like The Weeknd's lyrics, especially as of late, it's kind of always been like this, but I'm just sick of the "don't unalive yourself, you're so hot, you're too hot to die." Just stop. Well, but overall, I think Dawn FM is a really good album. I think the production is stellar from 106 Point Never and everybody else that worked on this album, and I love the transitions and everything like that. And I think that the concept executed by Jim Carrey was also cool. So yeah, sure, I'll put it in the top 100. 10,000 Gex, 100 Gex, one of the most fun albums of this decade so far, I think. It's hilarious. It's a hilarious album, but it also has absolute heaters on it, and the production is crazy. This album's crazy, but I love it. Sudan Archives, thank God. Natural Brown Prom Queen. This is one of my favorite R&B adjacent projects I've heard in recent memory. I think that it has such a cool progression to it. The drums are stellar. It's got a vision. Vocals out of control. Love it. Punisher, Phoebe Bridgers, a little low, I think. A little low. I think this one deserves to be in the top 20. It is easily one of my favorite indie folk albums I've heard in my life, honestly. This is one of my favorite indie folk albums ever. So, yeah. And I think that comes down to not only is Phoebe's songwriting so consistently captivating, but the production is out of control on this album too, with the consistent ambient kind of spooky sound that they put on this album. It makes it for an album that really is ultimately indie folk, but sounds really unique, I think. Eve Toomer, thank God. Heaven to a Tortured Mind, hell yeah. This is one of my favorite rock albums of this decade for sure. I think it deserves to be in here. There's a theatricality to this album that is just so undeniably addicting. I think it's so much fun. Faye Webster, I know I'm funny, haha. Yeah, this is a really smooth jazz adjacent record, but it's got a great little modern twist on it. I think if we're gonna put a Faye Webster album, this is the only one that could possibly be in here. Probably a little higher than I would put it, but overall I'm glad that it's there. Clayla Raven. Yeah, I love the electronic elements and all of the dance hall and jungle stuff that is in this R&B album. I really liked it. I love you, Jennifer B. Jockstrap. This thing was killer. It was a really, really cool album. I love this one. Jane Remover, Frailty. Personally, A lot of people I know love Census Designated. This is my favorite Jane Remover album. I just think like the combination of those shoegaze elements and that wall of sound, but also like an almost like hyperpop thing, I think makes this album like so unique and so cool, and it feels so digital. Love that album. Rat Saw God, Wednesday. I think there's something so captivating just about like the narrative voice of these songs, to say something like so out of pocket and crazy next to something that is like so normal. I just love that songwriting style on this album, and I think it's something that Wednesday's always done really well. Turnstile Glow On, heater, bangers front to back. Bangers front to back. Yeah, love Glow On. While it does like involve their hardcore roots, it definitely is an album that I think is easily accessible to a lot of people that don't even like rock music. It's really it's just overall really fun and hooky and memorable. And yeah, and they're great performers as well too. So yeah, full of heaters. Kendrick, I think this is a little high for Mr. Morale for me. As much as I like this album and I love like the confessional nature of it, and I love how it's just like kind of a therapy session, the all over the place like nature of it, where he like kind of wants to have his like low key bangers, and then he has his like N95s, and then he has his like weird experimental tracks. It's really, honestly, I went back to this album recently. Mr. Morale's all over the place. And I think to get across this concept of like this therapy session that I think he's going for, I don't think that was necessarily the right move, but still a great album. I just think this is a little high for me. Don't know. Jessie Ware, what's your pleasure? Hell yeah. This is definitely the best Jessie Ware album, I think, of the 2020s. I wasn't as big on her last one, so I'm really happy to see this album here, though. Sexy Red, Hood Hottest Princess. The day this album dropped, I thought was fun. Brainless, party music. It's fun. It's fun. I'm not going to deny that. I don't know. There's like just nothing about this album to me that made me fall in love with it. And it's something that's quite a few critics that I respect have said that they love this album, and good for them. This album's fun. I just don't necessarily think it belongs this high up here. Yeah, I don't know. I can't see putting it this high personally, but shout out Sexy Red. Now I can see this one being this high. Jasmine Sullivan, Hotels, so good. Yeah, it is nothing but pure heat, and I think that the interludes off of this album are really fun as well. Yeah, some of the best R&B songs I've heard in the past decade have absolutely been off of this album, and I'm talking multiple. The runs that Jasmine does on this album is just out of control. Amaray Fountain Baby this high. Kind of based. I don't know if I'd put it this high, but cool to see it on there. Pharoah Sanders, rest in peace. I thought this album was gorgeous. This came out in 2019, but they're including albums that they couldn't include in their 2010s list. Magdalena's good. That's a good album. Honestly, this is one of those albums I need to go back to because I've always preferred LP1. Did you know there's a tunnel under Ocean Boulevard? I don't think there needs to be that little EP section at the end of her doing like Born to Die stuff. I don't really think that there needed to be like 7 piano ballads in a row that have very similar pacing. I just feel like this album could have been paced a little bit better, but overall the songwriting is stellar, and it has some of the best songs of Lana's entire career on it, like A&W and Let the Light In, and those songs I think are some of the best songs of Lana's entire career. So Blue Rev, Always, that's bass. I like that. Not my favorite Always album, and I don't think I'd put it this high, but Blue Rev's really good. Yeah, this is an interesting Billy Woods choice. I like it. I mean, though, this Maps is one of my favorite Billy Woods projects for sure. He's been on a fucking crazy run lately. Desire, Want to Turn Into You, one of the best pop records I've heard in recent memory. It's got this huge scale to it that I love so much, and insane vocals. I think it manages to have a cohesive vibe to it while also like taking you a lot of different places, and I think that's it really takes a visionary to get something like that across. That's a hard thing to accomplish. Big Thief, Dragon, New War Mountain, I Believe in You. Yes, this is great. Something I will say, call me controversial, okay? I don't know if this is controversial or not. If Big Thief's on here, love this album, and Songs by Adrian Lanker isn't, I'll be a little bit upset, because I think the best thing Adrian Lanker has worked on in this decade is songs. Waxahachie, St. Cloud, I like this album I'm not as crazy about it as Pitchfork is. I remember the Pitchfork review like raving about it. And I think it's a really good like alt country album, if you want to call it that, like a contemporary country record. So based. Motomami, yes. Thank God it's here. Honestly, I this is one of the albums that came to mind for me first when I knew we were going over this list. It's one of the first albums that I thought of that I was like, if this isn't on here, I'm going to be pissed. Beautiful album. Talk about a visionary. Oh my God. Vocals out of control. The beats on here are insane, and there's so much beauty in it. And I love how Rosalia has that Latin pop energy and that reggaeton sort of stuff in this record, but she also has like traditional Spanish music as well, which I think it's cool that she blended those two things together, especially with the criticism Rosalia's kind of faced from a lot of Latin people. But yeah, absolutely gorgeous album. Motomami needs to be in there. Needs to be in everyone's top 10, I think. Brat, also, I feel like an album that needs to be there, but I wish I saw How I'm Feeling Now here. I don't think that How I'm Feeling Now is also going to be here. I think Brat deserved, but How I'm Feeling Now needs to be on this list. As much as I love Brat, I love that album. How I'm Feeling Now, I disagree with it being on here, and How I'm Feeling Now not. Renaissance, yeah. Renaissance needs to be in the top 10, I think, for everybody. The best Beyonce album. This is Beyonce's best record. I think it's her most consistent album. It's the best vision I think she's ever accomplished in an album. It's a love letter to dance music. It has R&B and club and house and pretty much everything you could ever need, while just also being consistently so much fun and so interesting and so captivating. I can't say enough good things about that album. I think SOS is great. Love SOS. Above a lot of these albums, I think is kind of crazy. Easily one of the best mainstream R&B records out there right now, for sure. Definitely. But above Renaissance, just seeing it right next to Renaissance and above it is crazy. And I wasn't in love with every single track, but I do love this album. I just think over some of these is kind of crazy. Cindy Lee, Diamond Jubilee, truly one of the more unique pop albums, I guess, if you could call it that. But it's got this really cool like 70s, like 60s, like psychedelic pop energy to it, but it also has like modern production flares, indie pop. Yeah. Really a truly unique experience. So I think that's cool. Pitchfork is sticking to their guns, bro. They are sticking to their guns. This feels like a sneak. I do think that with the Rage sound, like this album is obviously insanely influential, but the album itself, like I went back to this album recently, it doesn't feel finished to me. It feels half-assed. Like the vision's there, the execution isn't though. And I think as far as Cardi albums go, like consistency and quality wise, Dilate is way better. It's a way better album. All right, okay, what's one? Just tell me Pitchfork. Pitchfork is going to do something crazy. Oh, Real. Yeah, I haven't heard an album, and I probably never will again. I've never heard an album quite like this. And that makes sense. They did give this album a 10. I think it's the only 10 they've given this decade. So I'm happy to see this here. It makes sense due to it being Pitchfork. But yeah, this is like one of the more unique albums I've heard songwriting wise and texture wise, with all like the percussion in this album. It's such a unique album. So I'm happy to see this is here. This is one of my favorite Fiona albums. How is Sometimes I Might Be Introvert not in here? That's the first album that sticks out to me. I think the Mitski album should be on here. Black Country New Road isn't on here. There's no Black Midi. There's no JID. Oh my, no Forever Story? Wait, no Forever Story? No Cheat Codes, Black Thought and Danger Mouse? No Magdalena Bay? No Denzel? No Sufjan Stevens? No JPEG Mafia at all? No Guts, Olivia Rodrigo? No Sling Claro? No Paramore? Yeah, no Paramore is tough. Dude, a whole lot of Red being on here and all of those albums not. It's just so funny.